Can you speak about this? Because it has something to do with that identification with the Imago Dei, with the God image, right? And what, because one of the things I think about whenever someone's caught in an ideology of some kind is I'm thinking analytically, like you suggested, and the questions I always ask are, what are they getting from it? Like, what's it doing for them? And like, what's it making them do? Like, trying to understand, like, what
Mm.
they're getting, like a security or a sense of knowing that kind of thing, or an authority, or justifying, these secret desires they have. And so, like, let's talk about the mana personality, because I think that's really interesting. Like, because it gives someone a kind of a charisma, that identification, right? And it makes them an attractive figure, which is why people become gurus of different
Mhm.
kinds.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a certainly interesting idea. So the mana means energy or the spirit in a way. We can look at it as a mana is like something that is a lot of power.
Right. And it's like, I
But
believe, like a Polynesian word, right?
yeah, I'm not really exactly sure, but I don't remember where the mana comes from, if it's Polynesian or Sanskrit. But it essentially means that it's like the spirit. There is something can be endowed with that spirit. And when the person is possessed by the spirit, as Jung would say, identified with that, then one acts as higher than actually one is, right? So the ego falls under this spell or this illusion of immense power, and one believes that has that power, then it's really easy to attract all these projections from other people who have this emptiness and want to find this guru to be powerful so they can solve all these problems for them without them needing to go and do this authentic suffering. And we've
Hmm.
seen it in the person of Hitler, for example, right? I mean, he just attracted it, and Jung said, well, it's a scarecrow. He's an empty guy. And look, he's just saying those things because he's possessed, and people are following him and marching to death for this guy. So, and I think we see need a lot in the history, and we've seen it certainly nowadays. The people who got fall into this monopersonality spell, they believe they can do anything. Just like Vladimir Putin, he said, he believes he has no limits in what he wants, and he can achieve it.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So it causes an egoic inflation because the ego becomes kind of filled up with this sense of power. And I'm interested in the kind of people who are vulnerable to dark religion, but also the mana personality. Like, how can people guard against being seduced by that charisma and power?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a very good question. Like, what is the remedy, or what is the how one stays protected? Jung talks about it, and he talks about that we need to be anchored in God, because this spiritual split or the spiritual dread often leads to all kinds of forms of possessions. He said the communism is one of those, right? Like when you sort of eliminate God, when you pronounce God being bad, then what happens with all this energy that all energy possesses in a sort of a conspicuous and a different form in the form of material possessions or consumerism, etc. So Jung said like spiritual approach to life is actually the antidote to possession, meaning being open-minded, being able to look into unconscious, being able to have a relationship with different aspects of ourselves without rejecting them, without demonizing them, without splitting them off, and working with them in an honest, uh, sort of consciously painful way, having a conscious suffering about our own selves in conscious suffering about what is happening to us, being realistic about that, rather than creating defensive mythologies that accuse somebody else or are so fantastic that do not produce any solutions, only create this isolation of the ego that is caught in this fantasy of the false self. So really working through it in an honest and spiritual way.
I found that a depth psychological or archetypal understanding helps with this, helps maintain this openness and considering all the different possibilities as equally possible, but also valid as well. And I think James Hillman was really good at that. I mean, he was so anti-dogmatic, even about, his kind of own hero and mentor, Jung. And I wonder, like, because there is something that kind of paradoxically can happen, no? That even Jung's ideas, which suggest this kind of open attitude, exploratory attitude, analytic attitude, can itself be turned into like a dogma that may even act as a kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily a dark religion. I don't know how, Jungianism could be used for very malevolent purposes. But certainly I've seen it in personal relationships where people can use some of these ideas to either defend or attack another person. Like, for instance, just saying, "Oh, your reflection of me is a projection," obviously, and it's so like the Jungian idea is used as a kind of shield for the ego. So I mean, like, little self-analysis here as a Jungian. I mean, is this possible? Am I reaching too far to say that even Jung's ideas could itself become a dark religion of sorts?